Okay, y'all. Today we have to talk about self-sabotage. It's actually kind of funny that I am making this video right now because I just had a very long conversation with my personal behavior coach yesterday about the ways that I was self-sabotaging some of my own behavior changes that I'm engaging in right now. So today, I'm going to talk to you about 4 ways that you can identify and stop self-sabotage before it actually derails your goals. By the way, hi, my name is Dr. Karin Nordin, and I am an expert on all things behavior change. What that means is that I have a PhD in a field called health communication, and I actually studied mindset. So all of these self-help techniques that you've heard and they haven't worked, that's probably because they weren't as evidence-based as we needed them to be. So today, we're going to give you real, actual techniques and tactics to reduce that self-sabotage. Make sure to hit that follow button before we get started if you want more science-based self-help. Let's get started, and I'm going to do a little drawing today for you. Let's get started with tip number 1, which is identifying your upper limit. I want you to think about your behavior as a thermometer. And it's often actually very easy to think about this in the realm of money. Let's say that in your bank account, the max that you've ever had in your bank account is $5,000, okay? And let's say that the lowest you've ever had in your bank account was negative $250. This is the range that your brain is used to dealing with. This is your thermometer for that particular aspect of your life. Now, this is important because when you start to adjust your thermometer, your brain doesn't like that, which means when you get close to having $5,000 in your bank account, you might start spending money like crazy. You might start doing this completely subconsciously. But that's why tip number 1 has to do with awareness. It has to do with you identifying what your upper limit actually is. So let's use another example. Let's say that you are working out and you always self-sabotage and go off the rails and stop working out. How long were you able to work out in a row before you started self-sabotaging? What is your upper limit? What is the top of your thermometer? By identifying that, you're going to be able to know when it's coming. And so the next time you get close to that target, you can start keeping an eye out for self-sabotage. So I want you to imagine that this is a mountain. And at the top is your upper limit. The lighting is going to just... All right, the lighting was getting really wacky, so we've relocated for tip number 2, which is to identify your own warning signs. So let's say that you know that your upper limit is that $5,000 you have in your bank account. How are you gonna know when you're close to getting there? In some cases, that might be when your bank account hits $4,000. Or maybe when you work out so many days in a row. What I want you to really think about is what is the first thing you normally start doing or you normally start saying to yourself when you are self-sabotaging. Maybe you start to say, oh, this one purchase doesn't matter. Maybe you start to say, oh, it's going so well, I can let this one day slide. Think about your red alert signs and write them down so that you're better able to identify them. Okay, so now we're gonna talk about tip number 3, which is identifying what's dangerous about the thing that you actually want. Let's say, for example, that you want to lose weight. What is potentially dangerous about successfully losing that weight? Maybe you think people will pay more attention to you. Maybe you think some of your friends will have negative opinions about that changed body. Maybe you think that something will go wrong and you'll disappoint yourself and gain the weight back. There are so many things that our brain considers to be danger about getting to a goal that even might feel positive or empowering at first. And one of the reasons that we're self-sabotaging is that our brain is actually protecting us from what it thinks is going to be a danger. So that's tip number 3. I want you to identify what's dangerous so that you can get it out in the open and be aware of what you're actually afraid of. Finally, you'll notice that most of these tips focus on mindfulness and awareness. And that's intentional on my part. When it comes to self-sabotage, it's not necessarily about doing something differently or taking a different approach. It's about being aware and conscious of what's going on so that when the self-sabotage starts to happen, you can make a pivot. And so that's why tip number 4 is to practice mindfulness. Mindfulness isn't just about sitting on your bed every day in meditation zone, breathing deeply in and out. Fundamentally, Mindfulness is about acknowledging what's going on in your mind and in your body and having a heightened state of awareness about that. That might look like becoming more aware of your emotions. And when you start to feel that sense of, oh my gosh, I can't do this, I'm going to self-sabotage in order to avoid that disappointment. A meditation practice is a great way to start, or even just setting several moments throughout the day where you can pause and check in with yourself. One thing I'll add, and this is not really a full tip, but if your goal isn't broken down, that could be one of the reasons why you're self-sabotaging, because your brain just thinks that's too big and too scary for you to deal with. So if you haven't watched my video on how to break down your goal, that is where I would go next. And by the way, self-sabotage is something that I deal with too. It's something that I've, like I mentioned, detected in my own life. So if you want to see more of my day by day, make sure you're following me on Instagram, because I do a ton of stuff on stories and I give you a real honest look of what it looks like to actually pursue, resist, struggle, and still achieve your goals.